Hi guys, today we're going to talk about our 6.2 comparing fractions, decimals, and percents notes. Our I can statement is I can compare and order fractions, decimals, and percents and solve real life problems. Okay, when comparing and ordering fractions, decimals, and percents, it's important to write the numbers as all fractions, all decimals, or all percents. Put a little note down here. It really should be the last choice to use fractions because in order to compare them, they must have a common denominator. So I highly suggest using that as your last option. I would use the decimals or percents over using fractions. All right, so let's take a look at example 1. So it says comparing fractions, decimals, and percents, which is greater? So we have 3/20ths or 16%. So what I really want to do is get the 20ths into 100. Hundreds are easy to work with. Hundreds or tens, if you're ever able to get into something like that, that's going to be a really easy one to work with. So 3/20ths can go into 100, right? I can multiply by 5. So here I would have to do the same, multiply by 5, which means that I would get 15. So I have 3/20ths, which is 15 out of 100, and we know percents are always out of 100. And we have 15% or 16%, and says which one is greater. So the greater is going to be 16%. So 16% is greater. All right, 79% or 0.08, which is 8/100ths. So I'm going to turn them into the decimal into a percent. And to turn a decimal into a percent, I need to move my decimal point to the right 2 times. 1, 2. So that is going to equal 8%. Okay, so we need to figure out which one is greater, 79% or 8%. Well, the 79% is greater. Okay. All right, go ahead and pause the video. You have 2 more try on your owns. All right, let's look at example 2, our real life application. It says you, your sister, and a friend each take the same number of shots at a soccer goal. You make 72% of your shots, your sister makes 19/25ths of her shots, and your friend makes 67/100ths of his shots. Who made the fewest shots? So I need to turn this into a comparable set of data. So I'm going to turn the 72%, we can leave it as a percent, or we can turn it into a decimal. I'm going to leave it as the percent. So I have 72%. I'm going to take the 19/25ths and turn it into a percent as well. And we know percents are always out of 100. And again, this one is pretty easy to turn into hundredths. So I'm going to be able to multiply the top and the bottom by 4. And that is going to give me, let me change this, 76 out of 100, which is 76%. And then I have 0.67, which in order to turn it into a percent, I have to shift it over to the right twice, my decimal point. So I'm going to get 67%. So it says who made the fewest shots? That would be your friend. So your friend had the lowest number of shots that he made. Go ahead and pause the video and do try on your own number 2. All right, let's look at example 3. The map shows the portions of the U.S. population that live in 5 states. List the 5 states in order by population from least to greatest. So for this one, we need to start with any of them. We can start with, we'll start with Washington, and we're going to turn it into a percent because I think percents are fairly easy to compare. So Washington has 1/50th. So again, we can turn that into 100, which makes it really easy to work with percents. So in order to do that, I would multiply by 2. So I have to do that to the top as well. So I would get 2, which means that it's 2% of the population. Then we would have Michigan. So I'm going to turn that decimal from Michigan, which is 0.03, into a percent. And remember, we want to move our decimal point twice to the right, which means that it is 3% of the population. All right, let's take a look at New York. New York is already in a percent, so we're going to leave it alone at 6%. Ohio is 1/25th. Okay, again, I want to turn that into a percent or 100 at the bottom so I can get a percent pretty easily. I can multiply 25 by 4 to get to 100. So I'm going to do that to the top as well. So I would get 4% in Ohio. So Ohio's population is 4% of the US population. And then I'm going to do California. California's population, okay, is 0.12 or 12 hundredths. Okay, so if I want to move my decimal point to the right twice, that's going to help me figure out my percent. So I have 12% of the US population lives in California. So it says list the 5 states in order by population from least to greatest. So we are going to go with the smallest amount, which is the 2%. So I have Washington. Then I would have the 3%, which is Michigan. Then I have 4%, which is Ohio. I don't have a 5%, but I do have a 6% over here in New York. And then last, for the highest percent, is going to be California, which is at 12%. So go ahead and pause the video and try the last try on your own.